Okay, so last time we were dealing with a major machlokus in the Rishonim on the Gemara that starts on Chav Hey and Aleph. Oh, Shkayach. Menachem Mendel ben Shmuel. Tonight's shir and Divrei Torah should be Schus Le'ili Nishmaso of Adi's father, Menachem Mendel ben Shmuel. All the words of Torah should be Le'ilias Nishmaso. So the Gemara we started last time on Chav Hey and Aleph discusses Milva Ribbis. So the Gemara said, Amar Rava, Loive Ribbis Polsel Eidus. Rava had a chiddush that it's not just the lender that lends Ribbis that becomes puzzle, but even the borrower becomes puzzle. That was Rava's chiddush. Now, just to quickly recap, we had a discussion amongst Tosfos. Again, the way you have to approach our Mishnah and the sugyas that we're discussing is why are only these listed and enumerated in the Mishnah. The assumption of many of the Rishonim is that these are unique, that they're only invalid and pasul midrabanan, not pasul midaraisa. So the question is, why is it only pasul midrabanan when it comes to a lav deoraisa of lending beribis? That should be pasul minatayra. So Taisus has two suggestions. Taisus first suggests we're talking about a case where it's only Ribbis D'Rabbanan. You can have many cases. Majority of the cases of Ribbis is Ribbis D'Rabbanan. Majority of Shulchan Aruch and Hilchos Ribbis is cases that people wouldn't have thought are classic Ribbis when you're not stipulating from the beginning of the loan and so forth, or many different situations like we've discussed in the past of what Ribbis D'Rabbanan could be. So Tosa says you're not going to be Pasal Midaraisa on a case of Ribbis D'Rabbanan. So when was the Gemara saying that you're going to be Pasal Midrabanan? Both a Malve and a Love would be Pasal in a case of Ribbis D'Rabbanan. Then Tosas had a second suggestion, fascinating suggestion. No, really, even if it's bona fide Ribbis D'Oraisa, perhaps this is not perceived to be as a severe Avera, and although you'd violate an Issa D'Oraisa, you are not going to be invalid Mida Oraisa. So that was the two options of Tosfos. And we saw that the Mechaber paskin like the Rambam, that paskin like the first Shita, that depends what type of severity of ribbis you're involved in. If it's D'Oraisa, you're Pasal D'Oraisa. The woman's not even married if you're an aid and you lent Ribbis D'Oraisa. And if it's Ribbis D'Rabbanan, so you're only Pasal D'Rabbanan, and then we would have to deal with the fact that you're kosher on a level of D'Oraisa and you're only Pasal D'Rabbanan. We pointed out in the end of last week's shir that the Nemuk Yosef had a different option. Nemuk Yosef said, the malve is pasul. We split. The malve is pasul min atayra, but the love is only pasul midrabanan. And if it would be ribbis derabanan, the Nemuk Yosef takes it down one notch, and the Nemuk Yosef says no. The malve is pasul midrabanan, and the love is not pasul at all. That was the chiddush of the Nemuk Yosef, to split between the malve and the love. So that's what we're coming back to over here. So the Gemara says milva beribis. So again, just we discussed last week, what we were discussing primarily last week was why would the lova be puzzle? How does it fit with the general criteria? Let's assume if you would be in the camp of understanding that to be that you're puzzle manatayra even by the lova, not like the Nemuk Yosef. So what's the lova doing? First of all, is the lova getting malchus? So if the malva is not getting malchus because it's a lav shenitim le'yeshavon, so the lova won't get malchus either. So then what is it? So we're saying the malva. No, there's the other option. The Rambam says even if something doesn't get malchus, you could still become pasul if it's rasha dechamas, if it's machmas chimud mamon. Person has a heavy desire for money, like zela. So then a person could be pasul edus even if there's technically no punishment, no malchus in such a scenario. So we asked. That's what we spoke about last week. Where's the chimud mamon of the love? The chimud mamon applies when the malva is taking someone else's money. The love is relinquishing money. The love is not taking money. So we had two suggestions. Either you have to touch up what chimud mamon means. Rashi suggested that chimud mamon means, no, I violate isurim because of a necessity for money. Meaning, parnas is b'daychak, and I am willing, one of my options are to do treif things in order to deal with, to succumb to create a parnasa, and I'll borrow beribis for that halacha. That's also considered chimud mamon. We pointed out that that would be a little difficult with the lashon of the Rambam, that the Rambam understood chimud mamon as lokeach mamon sheino shelo. Sounds like really like classic gezel. So by malva, maybe you're taking someone else's money. But by love, how could you say that lokeach mamon sheino shelo? So we suggested from the Maharik that no, perhaps you look at it as one package. That since without the lova, the malva would never be able to violate the isser, so we include the lova into the chimud mamon of the malva. That was what Rav Yosef Engel suggested on our Gemara from the Ma'arik to explain how you can understand chimud mamon, and we suggested perhaps that would be the understanding according to the Rambam's definition of chimud mamon. But we're going to take it from there. So now back to that Gemara, and as we closed last week, we said it's that Ma'arik is beautiful in the language of the Gemara. Amar Rava lova b'ribbis pasal eidus. Says the Gemara v'ha'nan tnan milva b'ribbis. But doesn't the Mishnah only say the malva, the lender, and not the lova? Doesn't the Mishnah seem to contradict what Rav is being mechadish, that the lova also is possible? Says the Gemara, milva haba'a beribbis. No, the Mishnah is saying not a malva as a lender. It's talking about the whole package, the whole scenario, which we said fit very well with the understanding of the Ma'arik, that the reason why the lova is considered a chamson, is considered a rasha dechamas and pasal edis, because he's involved in this general package of milva haba b'ribbis, which the Gemara is saying is exactly what the Mishnah was insinuating, and not insinuating a lender as opposed to a borrower. Fine. So if you look at the Ran that I passed out last week, did the guys still have it? So there is another girsa in the Gemara. Again, the Gemara asked the kasha, Amarova lova b'ribbis pasaledis, va'anan tanan milva b'ribbis. It talks about a lender, it doesn't talk about a borrower. So the Gemara says, answers no, it means milva haba b'ribbis. It means a loan that came about through ribbis. Good? So if you look at the Dibra Maskil on Amid Kuf Pei Tes in the Ran. A ribbis situation from a loan, but it didn't mean a lender. It meant the milva, the loan that's creating ribbis, right? So now the Gemara. So if you look at the Dibra Maskil of the Ran and Kuf Pei Tes, the second paragraph. So there's something different that the Ran has that we don't have. Does anyone schap the difference in our girsa? Look at the Gemara and look at the girsa of the Ran, the Dibra Maskil, the boldface. It's not really boldface on these copies, but yeah, he has an additional low. So now, before we see the Ran, what's the implication of why is that important? Again, the Gemara asked the kasha. The Gemara says, Ravi, you're trying to say that the borrower is pasal edus. The Mishnah says the lender is pasal edus. Says the Gemara, no, it didn't mean the lender. It means the loan. The loan that creates ribbis. It means the mal. It's the same word, but without nekudos. So you can't make it the milva or malva. Fine. So it meant the loan. So now, what's the implication of whether or not it says low or not? This is going to have tremendous implications. The lova. The low is lova, right? So what did the Gemara answer? Did the Gemara answer malva haba lo b'ribbis, or did it say milva haba b'ribbis? Who cares? Either way, it's going to answer that what the lova is going to be pasal edus to answer up for Rava. So what do I care if whether the girsa is low or not? So listen to what the Ran says. Unbelievable girsa, unbelievable nafkamina, which the Nosei Kalim discuss. Hachi girsa berov asfarim, ulefi girsa zu ein hasoifer v'ha'edim psulim la'edis. What's the din? By the way, the title of this shir, I worked out in the end. I tried to figure out a pshat, but I meant to write edim, and it came out riding. I wrote riding, and then Mark wrote writing. So writing was technically right. So you had, but as we'll see in a second. But so it says the Ran, this girsa, this one little word, this two-letter word of lo, is now going to have practical implications. If you're an aid on a shtar that has interest in it, do you become pasal edus? If you have the girsa of our Gemara that what? Milva lo beribbis, so then you only are including what? The malva, and now we're including the lova as well. But anyone else, the sofer and the edim, so they might be over an Issa D'Oraisa. Gemara Matzia tells us that they're over an Issa D'Oraisa. Lo sasimin alecha neshech, that's also a lav for the edim to be made. But whether or not they become pasal edis, if they're called up for a chasana and they were edim on a loan that had ribbis, whether or not they're pasal, so that girsa in our Gemara is going to say that they're not pasal, which happens to be the psak of the shach and the sma, that we don't, that only in the malva love are pasal and no one else pasal. But we'll see. Not all the Rishonim held like this. Look at the other girsa. Lefi girsa zu ena sefer va'edim psulam edis afal pishem over lo sasimin alecha neshech. The time of the mitzvah the lo sasimin alecha neshech b'milva mashmalul inchi v'tobalchi. And what's the reason they're not posel? What's the reason they're not posel is because people don't think that there's an isser in lo sasim. If I would ask you, translate to me lo sasimin alecha neshech. Don't put ribbis on your loan. Who is that talking to? It's the milva. Maybe it's the loivet, we're mechadish over here, but the edim, that they're not involved at all, what are they doing wrong? They're just bystanders. The the garsi says they're on, but there are those that are goris in our Gemara. What? Our girsa. Milva haba beribis. Well, if the girsa zu says they're on, and according to this girsa, af hasofer va'edim bechlal, even the sofer, even the scribe, and even the edim would be pasala edus in this situation. Yeah. A guarantor. But the third person's supposed to, back up the loan. Guarantor, right. So I don't want to get into it. We gave this shear, I don't remember, Adi. We gave this shear years ago. I don't remember how many years ago. But we spoke about, it's a machlokes, the Rashba and Rashi. You're not going to be puzzle, pashtas for sure. If the edim are not puzzle, they are, again, depending on what type of guarantor. There's a machlokes, the Rashba and Rashi, in which situations a guarantor could be violated d'oraisa, and therefore the guarantor in certain situations could be considered like the lender. So that's, there's a difference between an Arav Kablan and an Arav Shlaftatz. It's a whole machlokes Rishonim that we're that the Nosei Kalim, that the Rashba and Rashi argue about whether or not which cases would be illicit. In theory, a guarantor could be in certain situations like a lender, so it wouldn't necessarily be the same issue as the Edom and the Sofer that are not involved in the loan at all. The guarantor could sometimes, depending on the stipulation, depending on whether or not you can go directly to the guarantor or not, there's a lot of different caveats within the halachos of Hilchos Ariv that the Ariv could be more involved and could be a serious problem and could potentially be puzzle. Yeah, that's and either way, it's an important issue to know whether or not it's puzzle or not leidus, but there could be serious violations d'oraisa of backing up a loan that's and you could have problems in that situation. You could have problems. It's really off our topic, but you could really have problems even involving a goy in that situation. Meaning, if even though there's a third party that's a guy, that's the lender, but if there's two Jews, let's say a father and a son, that's backing up a loan, and you're setting up the guarantee to be like he's a lender, so then that could create an issue d'oraisa even involving a guy. So guaranteeing a loan is very, very, very big problem, and it comes up sometimes that people don't realize that you have to really ask a shaila depending on what your setup is, but you should stay away from those situations of guaranteeing where it's us. So, yeah, good. Eitan, you had a question?
I was just going to ask.
Yeah.
With regards to whether you'd be postulatus or not, if you were paid for a star that involved Ribbis, wouldn't there be any would it be predicated on the fact would it be based on whether the aid was a willing or just happened to be a willing participant in
Oh, wow, I can't believe you just said that. So let's hold tight for like 2 minutes. So before we get to Eitan's question, which will be the answer to my next question, what's bothering you? Let's take the worst case scenario. The other girsa, milva haba b'ribbis. Milva haba b'ribbis. So according to the Rana, milva haba b'ribbis is what? That includes not only the malva and the levit. The Gemara never said low, so it includes also The periphery, the people who are involved, anyone involved linked to the halva. So what if I would tell you? So you have a shtar. You have a shtar with Edom on it, right? And now the question is whether or not these Edom are now going to be Pasal Edis, right?
The concepts themselves?
You hear what Adi's asking? Gemara Baba Kama says as follows. Shtar sheyeshel of Ribbis, chachamim omrim goves hakaren. So what's the question, Rabbi say? Worst case scenario, the Edom are Pasal Edis, right? So the shtar should be Pasal.
Yeah, exactly.
So how could the Gemara say that that the Edom become Pasal Edis? No, they don't become Pasal Edis because there's no shtar. They're not Edom.
Why not they could become?
Oh, beautiful. So this is Taisis Kasha. Kasha Lari and Tais Baba Kama Laman Beis. I apologize that I didn't make copies. I took a picture of the Taisis. I forgot to send it. No, I didn't even. I just got carried away with something else. I didn't send it to Adi, so I apologize. Just bear with me for a second. Kasha Lari Lama Hashtar Kosher. Kevon Sha'edim Oivrim Alos Asiman Alecha Neshech. So Taisa says, "Afagav de'enam eded the chamas." Doesn't matter. We pass like Abaye that even if you eat treif, we learned in the past, even if you eat treif lahachis, not because of a taiva, you're puzzle. So Taisa asks, assuming what? That you're getting malchus, that there's a lav sheish malchus l'chora. Tos doesn't spell that out, but at least according to the Rambam, you would need to assume to get this question off the ground is that you need to get malchus. So I would assume that that's what Tos is assuming. So why is the shtar even good? Why is it Goves HaKaren? The Gemara is saying it's not Goves HaRibbis, but it's Goves HaKaren. You don't have Eidim on it, so you shouldn't even be able to be Goves with the shtar. The shtar should be Avarubato. So Taisus says in the first answer, an answer that we've already seen. Yesh Laimar, it's talking about the guarantor, the malva, the loiva, but people don't associate the lav of Lo Tasimin Alecha Neshech with the Eidim. So even though the Eidim violate an Isser, it's just like Taisus said by us, but it's not psychologically, it's not absul, it's not viewed as such a bad thing, so therefore it's not going to invalidate the Eidim, and therefore the Eidim are still kosher. Second day in Taisus, right, is what? Exactly what Eitan says. Inami yesh sheyesh Eidim shayanusim machmas nefashos. There were Eidim that were forced into the matter, and they don't become puzzle because, whatever it is, they were gonna the mafia was gonna take them out if if they weren't gonna testify, and then they had to testify, right? Good. In Yana Diyama. So that's the 2 days and Taisus. What are these 2 days and Taisus? There are exactly our two gersas in our Rishonim. Whether or not the Eidim become puzzle, do you have the gersa of milva above Ribbis? Do you have the gersa of milva haba lo b'Ribbis? The Ktseis HaChoshen suggests an answer that Taisus doesn't suggest. It's a fancy answer, but I happen to like this answer a lot. Ktseis HaChoshen answers the following answer. He says, you have such a similar question in a totally different area in halacha. The Gemara discusses a person shechting on Shabbos. The Mishnah in Chulin and Daf Yedalit. So the Mishnah says, "Ach sheichit b'Shabbos chitaso kshera." So the Rishonim all ask, I don't understand. If you desecrate Shabbos publicly, you become like Dino Kakum. Umar l'chal Shabbos v'arhesia is Dino Kagoy, right? You're not treated like a Jew anymore. So if you're Mechal Shabbos v'arhesia, so by definition your shechita should be puzzle, because you were Mechal Shabbos v'arhesia al yedei the shechita. So that's Taisus Kasha. So Taisus says a chiddush. Taisus says you only become a mummer 3 strikes. That's where they got it in baseball from. They got it from Taisus and Chul and Yadal. So it takes 3 times for you to be out, and that's what Taisus says. So the Gemara Mishnah was discussing the first time that you don't have the status of a mummer. So the Nemuki Yosef doesn't say like Taisus. The Nemuki Yosef says no, 1 time you're out, not like baseball. It says in Nemuki Yosef, but you only become puzzle after the shechita, at the end of the shechita. Mikana lahaba. That's when you're going to become Kasel. So that's what the Nimuk Yosef answers. So says the K'tzais HaChoshen, that's the answer to Taisus Kasha by Eidim by Ribbis also. Just like the Nimuk Yosef said by Mummer that your shame paslas only becomes from the Gemar Shchita when you finish, so too when it comes to Eidus, once you were made on the shtar and the shtar is registered now for other Eiduses, then you become pasal. It's a long tzais that discusses two different sibas to pasal, whether it's a chash meshaker or not. So he says this is a chiddush that you're pasling, you give him a shem psul, and that's only mikana lahaba once the edus is over, and therefore you become relevant. But it all stems, according to this Ran, this whole issue stems, and what Taisus is answering right before the Tzai says his fancy answer, it's all to answer up this Gemara of how could on the one hand the Gemara and Bava Kama say that a shtar sheyesh bo edim, you could be goyves haker and the shtar is still valid, when the Gemara says a milva abba beribbis, they're all puzzle. So it all depends on whether or not you have the girsa of milva abba low or milva stam milva abba beribbis. So that's all whether or not the edim would also become invalid when it comes to edis. But I was just very bothered. What are we discussing over here on the tzad that you would become pasal edis? The edim do become pasal edis. So again, to say that there's Rasha de Chamas over here, right? So it's very hard to say it's Rasha de Chamas. You're not getting any money. You're just a witness. You're a bystander. To say that they're in Malkus, that's also very difficult. Because if the Malva is not getting Malkus, the Lov is not getting Malkus, the Eidim are going to get Malkus. So one could argue and say to me, no. The Malva is not getting Malkus, the Rambam tells us, because by him it's a lav anitan le'yishavon. He can give back the ribbis. It's like v'heshev is like zela. He can return the money. But by the Eidim, perhaps the lav of lo sasiman olav neshech is a lav that you would have Malkus when it comes to the Eidim and not when it comes to everyone else. Unless you say that, no, the whole discussion over here was all being pasal midrabanan. But midoraisa, no one was suggesting that you would be pasal. So my question was, even in worst case scenario, let's just work this out. If a person wants to say that we're talking on a level of doraisa, and there's malchus over here. What malchus? What's the problem over here? What's the problem with saying that the Eidim violate malchus? Aside from what I just said, that the malva and the love are not because they have a technicality that they have the ability to give back the money. What's a more fundamental problem? It's a lav shemo maisa. The Eidim are not doing anything active, so by definition, that doesn't get malchus. So I was bothered by this question. This is a whole discussion amongst Rishonim. No one's raising this issue that fundamentally there's no reason to pasal the Eidim over here. It's not a Rasha de Chamas. It shouldn't have malchus over here because it's not a lav sheish b'maisa. And finally, I found the Mishnah Melech asks this kasha, Milva V'loiva. He discusses this kasha. Excellent. So says the Mishnah Melech, we're talking about where they're signing a shtar. So then I started thinking, okay, they're talking about they're signing a shtar. They don't need to be signing the shtar. Here's my question that I'm raising right now. What happens is a very fundamental question that's coming out of our sugya. You have a lav she'efshar al yedei maisa. Means, if we don't go the route of milva al peh, of a baal peh loan, we go with the route of a milva b'shtar, so then the Eidim are signing on the shtar, they're doing a maisa. But in theory, they could have violated the same lav, lo sasiman olav neshech, if they would have just been passive bystanders. Is that a lav that gets malchus, or is that a lav that doesn't get malchus? So the Magid Mishnah tells us in one place that if it's efshar al yedei maisa, by definition, that's not a lav sheish b'maisa. The fact, it's baker. The fact that it's efshar shelo al yedei maisa now takes the whole maisa out of the maisa avera, and now makes it a second tier avera that it's not as stringent. But if you would want to get this lav, like you said, off the ground to be a lav sheyesh bo malchus, and to say that these Eidim are pasal Eidis, like the Mishnah Lamelech is suggesting, so the Mishnah Lamelech obviously holds that efshar al yedei maisa now makes it worse. And perhaps even if you don't do it, one could argue, with a Maisa, since I have the possibility to do it with a Maisa, I mean, you can go in two avenues, you can go two ways. There's a situation, you have a lav that is possible Aydei Maisa. So some Achronim will say, who cares? The fact that you could do it without a Maisa, that takes the whole teeth out of the lav, and it's a lower level lav, I shouldn't get Malchus. But the Mishnah Melech suggesting the opposite by the Eidim over here. Since it's possible through Eid or through a star, unless you're going to tell me that no, depends whether you signed or whether you didn't sign. And we're going to say Malchus, and this is only a case where they signed on the loan, and maybe you'd split it like that. But the Mishnah Malch doesn't say like that. The Mishnah Malch even suggests that the fact that you have the capability of Efshar Aydei Maisa, that will now reorient our understanding of this lav, and Efshar Aydei Maisa perhaps could even passel you, even when you don't have a Maisa, in that suggestion.
It's
Which
implying that witnessing is, there's no action, but there is. Person's there, his eyes open, he could have been anywhere, he could take himself out of the room, but he's being there in the presence to witness it. That is an action. It's not.
it's a lav. I don't think it's an action. It's not. It's you're doing something passive.
Do we have any other scenario in halacha where Eidim are almost required to do due diligence on what they're being Eidim to? In other words, it would seem in this scenario that it behooves the Eidim to essentially do due diligence on what they're being made on, so that they're not subjecting themselves to a scenario where they would be made on a.
Which would imply an action. I mean, taking the time to understand what they're doing.
Well,
That's definitely what they write.
Right. In other words, is this a standard procedure for Eidim across halacha? I mean, obviously there's certain scenarios of Eidus where you just happen to be in that place at the right time. But in a scenario like this, where it would seem that where you're signing a star in a scenario like this, where it's an organized process and there's a real process involved, that is it a burden on the Eidim to diligence what they're.
You have to. It's really a mistake that when I'm called up for a ksuba or anything, you really should read that star and make sure you know what's going on before you're giving Eidus on that.
To look into who the, for example, the kedushin. Do you know the chassan?
Yeah.
Have you done?
Yeah. Yeah, you should know. You should know what's going on. You should know. You should not only know. You should know who you're being made with. You should check in. You shouldn't be a chaplop thing. It should.
So then, I mean, to that point, then, if there's an achrayus on the Eidim to really take on.
But that doesn't make. When we're saying Maisa, we mean in a very technical sense that the Chazal were mechadesh based on psukim, that you need something similar to where the Torah introduces Malchus, muzzling a cow, and there's an Issur d'oraisa to muzzle a cow while it's grazing, and that is really with a physical action, and anything short of that type of active participation would not give Malchus. So you're right. There could be situations that I set it up and that I was involved, but if Lamaisa at the time of the transgression I was passive, so then that's going to be a lav shema maisa. No, sir. I did a lot of things. I prepared it. I set it up, but at the time of the transgression, you're passive. Doesn't matter. It's still going to be a lav shema maisa.
So if, for example, there is another star and it has nothing to do with it, maybe there is something within that contract that has malchut, even have death.
Well,
there is let's say there is some type of a contract.
A contract, yeah.
That has within it some major transgression. Forget about ribbis. Something that
outside of ribbis.
Yeah, something I don't know. If this doesn't happen, we'll get him and chop his foot. It's chop his. I don't know. We're going to.
You write a contract to kill someone.
Exactly, and I'm adding to that. What?
It's nothing.
You have to rip the contract, nothing happened.
Yeah, it's not binding. Yeah.
That's Ribbis d'oraisa.
It's not binding. I don't know. I wouldn't give you mafta yona, but but you didn't violate any dina. Yeah. Okay, fine. So that's but it's important. It's really an indirect discussion, but it really is pretty. It's pretty direct actually. Like this discussion of where you get the psul on the Eidim potentially could affect lav sheish bo malchus in general. Meaning this Mishnah Melech is really earth-shattering, and I don't really know unless you would say it's derabanan. If you hold it's d'oraisa, I don't really know another way to explain this.
What about the sofil, by the way? Let's say the sofil writes like a template, right?
Now, 100 people sign it.
Right.
Is it lifnei ver?
Sure.
So it's
Sure. No, by the way, the loaf is going to be over lifnei iver also.
Yeah,
Just lifnei iver is just not going to be enough to passel edus.
yeah.
But yeah, you
And
for
he's
sure have
chayav for
lifnei
each and
iver.
every one that actually signs
You,
it,
but it's
right?
but what we're saying over here, Adi, is that it's more than lifnei iver. He has a lav deoraisa of lo sasim and a lav neshech,
Yeah.
in addition to lifnei iver. But for sure, he has lifnei iver over here. But lifnei iver wouldn't be sufficient to passel edus
No,
over
my
here.
question is that the software will be responsible for each and every contract that was
100%,
actually.
100%, 100%. Yeah, it's a problem.
It's
Yeah,
big,
yeah, yeah.
Thousands of people can sign it.
yeah,
It's a
100%.
mistake.
Yeah. It's to make sure that he doesn't get in the contracts into the wrong hands. Yeah. Okay. So just there's another issue over here before we go weiter in the Gemara. So the Gemara says v'anan tanan milva b'ribbis. So the Gemara says milva haba b'ribbis. So the Gemara goes on and says Bar Benisus, that was his name, Benisus, Asidu Beitrei Sadi. There were two Eidim that were made about Bar Benisus. Chad Amar Kamididi Ozif Beribusa. One said, in front of me he borrowed Beribis. V'chad Amar Lididi Ozfi Beribus. I'm sorry. One said that in front of me he lent Beribis. V'chad Amar Lididi Ozfi Beribisa. And the other one said, and one aide said, no, he actually lent to me Beribis. Okay? So the Gemara says, Pasli Rava leBarbenisus. And Rava pasled Barbenisus, the Malve, from Edus. Because he's a Malva Beribis, there were two Edim against him. Now everybody say, what's the problem over here? He's one of the aides. And if we take Rava's statement from what he said originally, so not only is the Malva Pasal Edus, but the Leiva is Pasal Edus. So how could you accept the one aid that said, Lididi Osfi Beribusa? You invalidated yourself. Well, Rava Uda Amar Lover Beribis Pasal Edus, Vahabale Rasha, Vatera Amar Al Tashesh Rasha aid. So how could you accept his Edus? So that's the Gemara's kasha. So now, hold on one second, before we get to the Gemara's answer. So go back to the Ran. The Ran in the paragraph before him. So again, remember, we had a major discussion that we introduced last week. The Lova being Pasala Edis. Is that a Psul de Oraisa, or is that a Psul de Rabbana? Okay? Tosfos said, if it's Ribbis de Oraisa, it's going to be Pasal de Oraisa. The Ram Paskin's like that as well, right? And then Mukha Yosef says, no. When it comes to the Malva, it's Pasal D'Oraisa. When it comes to the Lova, it's Pasal Midrabanan. We split between the Malva and the Lova, and that's what the Mukha Yosef says. Why is it in the list of the Mishnah? Not because of the Malva. The Malva is actually Pasal D'Oraisa. The reason why it's in the midst of the Mishnah that's only Psul and D'Rabanan is because of the Lova. Exactly what the Gemara was Machadish, that Rava told us, that a Lova is Pasal Midrabanan for Edus, according to the Mukha Yosef. So the Ran is about to prove to us that this can't be. This idea of the Nemuk Yosef, anyone who holds that the Lova is on a lower level than the Malva is wrong. Why? From the Gemara that we just read. Let's read the Ran. In Chaf Ham and Aleph, Kuf Pei Ches, the bottom paragraph. Perishim Lava Beribis D'Rabanan Pasal D'Rabanan, and if he's D'Oraisa, it's Pasal D'Oraisa. V'tzarech Achraza. Now, if you remember, the Gemara in Chavavam and Beis tells us there's a distinction between people that are invalid on a level of D'Oraisa and people that are invalid on the level of D'Rabanan. If you're invalid mid'oraisa, then you're invalid once you transgress the avera. That's it. If you're invalid midrabanan, so the Gemara is mechadesh that you need an announcement, and up until the Bezdin announces to you, to the Yolam, that this person is pasul, his chalois shem psul was not chal and was not enacted and implemented on him. So the Ran says, "V'im lova beribis ktutza pasum midaraisa v'ein tzarach achraza." Shelo kedivrei ktsasa mefarshim she'amru the milva beribis afilu ribis ktutza loy mafzilei elam derabanan kevid b'dayit yoyvlei v'araya, and I'll prove to you that we're pasum midaraisa. Mehad barbaitus sheheir alav lididi Yosef beribusa v'paslei ravel barbaitus. Umakshina, and the Gemara asks the kasha we just read, V'amar Rava loiva pasal eid, this havele Rasha v'atoyer amar al sashes Rasha eid. V'i pasol milva b'ribbis ktutza ein olam d'Rabbanan. If you hold it's only d'Rabbanan, my kushya dahai ad lo yechrizu alav. V'imkein kashu le'edis ad shiachrizuhu. Says the Ran, why did the Gemara have a kasha? If you hold like what? Like those Rishonim that say that you're only pasol d'Rabbanan, like one day in Taisa says, for whatever reason, that milva b'ribbis, people don't know psychologically that it's such a chamer isser, so therefore we're not going to invalidate people. So then what? Even the milva and the lova are only going to be pasum d'Rabbanan, or according to the Mukhi Yosef, that splits between the malva and the lova is only pasum d'Rabbanan. So then what would you require to become pasol? The Gemara says if you're only pasum d'Rabbanan, you require what? A hachraza, an announcement. So ask the Ran, so why did the Gemara ask a kasha? The Gemara should have never had a question. The Gemara said, you want to know why Rava accepted his edus? Because there wasn't an announcement. And you're not puzzled until the announcement comes out. The Gemara has an easy out. So says the Ran, this is my proof that they must be puzzled min ha-Torah because the Gemara never opted to the solution of needing an hachraza. So that's the Ran's suggestion. That's the Ran's suggestion. From the fact that the Gemara didn't suggest this, that's why. That's how I know that he's puzzled. So who's going to have to answer for himself? Everybody say the Nemuka Yosef. The Nemuka Yosef, who said that the life is only puzzled d'Rabbanan, must have some way of getting out of this Gemara. So if you look at, I found actually in the Nemuka Yosef himself, he suggests a different pshat. So in my Nemuka Yosef, which is not going to be in yours, but it's in Daladam and Beis in the Dap Yarif. It's Dibra Maschil Vahavale Russia. So Vahavale Russia. So the Nemuka Yosef says, Hi Sada the Ha'oida the Leiva B'Ribbis. This aid that was Maide, that he borrowed B'Ribbis, which is the case of our Gemara. The Afal Gav de Mastisem Psuli de Rabbanan Tana K'de Prishne Upsuli de Rabbanan Ba Achraza. So ask the Nemuka Yosef, so who cares? So what? He's potentially possible de Rabbanan, but he needs an announcement, and without an announcement, he's not going to be invalid. So what's the Gemara's kasha? In the interim, before they actually announce that he's puzzle, kosheru. So what's the Gemara's kasha? Says the Nemuka Yosef, what's this whole reason that you need to announce when it comes to Psulim D'Rabbanan? Why are we distinguishing between Psulim D'Rabbanan and Psulim D'Oraisa? Where did this come from? If you violate an Issa D'Oraisa, you become puzzle automatically. Why, when it comes to these lower level Psulim D'Rabbanan, were they machadish that you have to announce it? So the Nemuka Yosef says, I'll tell you the reason. It's because we were concerned about Pseida L'Kuchos. There would be other transactions that you were testified for in the interim, and they didn't know about your Psul D'Rabbanan. So the rabbis, by making you puzzle, are actually causing what? A loss of money to other merchants, to other people that used you as an aid. So now I'm going to cause a hefsid, a loss of money to many, many different merchants, many different L'Kuchos, many different buyers. That is going to cause a big problem in the market. And the rabbi said, if it comes to an Issa D'Oraisa, we don't have an option. We're not in control. But when it comes to Psulim D'Rabbanan, we have the ability to limit that hefsid. So we don't want to do Epseda L'Kuchos. But what? Aval Midina Pasal. But in a situation where there's no Pseda L'Kuchos, he really should become Pasal like a Psul D'Oraisa. V'hocha, says the Nemuka Yosef, in our case, the Leka Pseda L'Kuchos, where there was no loss of money, it was just L'didi Usiv B'Ribusa. So therefore what? Imkein Arei Pasal. So even by a Psul D'Rabbanan, he's Pasal. So basically, Nemuka Yosef himself, who was pushed against the wall based on the Ran's Taina, he had to say, yeah, you misunderstood why Hachraza is necessary. Hachraza is only necessary in situations where there's going to be a hefsid to other L'Kuchos. In our case, there's no hefsid to L'Kuchos, so then you go back to the regular halacha, which is that even Psulim D'Rabbanan are Pasal right away, and that's why the Gemara had a kasha according to Rava. That's what the Nemuka Yosef says. Then, in the second daya, he says the following, Rabbi Yisrael, and what I'm about to read in Nemuka Yosef is actually a machlokes, the smat and the shach in Noisekein. Listen to this. Aval mikomokom. So then he says, Oy tirtzu, de loy ba'ina nachraza, el lemifsele l'shar eduyos. Aval mikomokom la'oso edus, shenifsel b'shvilo, lo ro chachamim la'aminu, va'afilu below achraza psulo, what's the second teretz of the Nemuka Yosef? How to get out of this kasha? No, you're right. You need achraza. and now he's suggesting you need achraza always. By all psulim d'Rabbanan you need achraza. Let's not qualify the Gemara later on that says psulim d'Rabbanan need achraza. It's not because of only hefsid and pseida d'lekuchos, and we're going to differentiate when there's a monetary loss, when there's no monetary loss. Always you're only psulim d'Rabbanan if there's announcement. Says the Nemuk Yosef, but that's what? That's for other cases. But what about for this very case? What about for this very case? This case that they're actually testifying about? Even without a hachraza, they are going to be pasul. That's for edus acheres. But for this iser, then they would actually be osa edus. Then they would be actually pasul even without a hachraza. So what does the other day hold? What are the other rishonim? What did the Ran hold? L'chora the Ran held that no, when it comes to, it has to be it's b'manavshach. Either you're pasul, there's no half psulim. You're either pasul or you're not pasul. We don't distinguish between oso edis and edis acheres. The thing that creates you to be pasul is when you're announced to be achraza, right? Because it's not based on pseida l'kuchos, and that's the reason why you're going to be pasul. The Nemuk Yosef thought it's a technicality. Legabe other eduyos, so then we're going to pasul, but legabe this edis, there's no problem that we can now distinguish and differentiate, because you don't find such an idea when it comes to other edus that we're going to split hairs and say for this edus yes, for that edus no. It's all one group. So that's again within psula d'Rabbanan, based on this question of the Rishonim, Rabbosai, we're going to have a major debate amongst the Rishonim. Number one, is hachraza only because of pseida d'lekuchos, and therefore we could differentiate when there's no hefsid d'lekuchos. Would we say that he's pasul? And do we differentiate and do we say that no, la'oso edus really is pasul, but just for our edus acheres, then we need a hachraza, then we need an announcement in order to invalidate him for other edus? Or do we say no, either he's pasul or he's not? If he didn't get the announcement, he's not going to be pasul. Why should you need, in that logic, why should you need an announcement? Because the answer is because isurim d'Rabbanan are weaker isurim. They're not as known. So therefore, it could be the rabbi said we're only going to invalidate if it was announced and if it was known. I just want to close with one other answer. There's one possible other answer that the Achronim quote as a Birkei Yosef that has a fascinating chiddush within this sugya of hachraza. Again, the kasha we were asking is if he's only pasum d'Rabbanan and you hold like those pshatim that the lov is only going to be pasum d'Rabbanan. So what was the Gemara's kasha? He didn't have an announcement yet, and the Gemara says you need an announcement hachraza by psulim d'Rabbanan. So we suggested maybe for this very edus you don't need. It's only for other eduyos, and that's why the Gemara assumed that he was pasul. Or we suggested psulim d'lekuchos, not pseida d'lekuchos. Says the Birkei Yosef, a fascinating chiddush. Perhaps the Gemara only suggested the necessity to have achraza by psulim d'Rabbanan on isurim d'Rabbanan. But if the psul d'Rabbanan is existing on what? On something that everyone agrees. Even Tosfos suggested that this was an issa d'oraisa. You can't get around the fact that the lov is violating an issa d'oraisa. Perhaps on a real bona fide heavy Isser d'Oraisa, even though technically we're only going to passel you on a level of D'Rabbanan, that's not where Chazal needed there to be a hachraza. It was only on a whole Isser that was a lighter Isser, that was a rabbinic Isser in the first place, and we're passeling you, we're now saying that rabbinic Isser is now going to create a psul D'Rabbanan, that you're even going to be invalid, so perhaps that would be a situation. If that would be the case, that would also answer the Ran's kasha. Over here, the loiv is for sure violating an issa d'oraisa. The question is, the Rishonim just say maybe he's not pasul mida oraisa. If that's the case, so then you have another answer, a third option to why over here we wouldn't need hachraza. It's because over here it's a psul d'Rabbanan on an isser d'oraisa, as opposed to later on where the Gemara is saying you need hachraza on a psul d'Rabbanan on an Isser d'Rabbanan, because the whole Isser to begin with was a much lighter Isser, and therefore Chazal were only introduced the Psul in such a scenario where it was announced to the whole call. So we'll have to go back to the answer of the Gemara and get into a fascinating sugya, how to resolve this issue. We're basically holding in a question right now, that the question is, why did Rava accept this person's edus if he said he lent me Ribbis? And we just dealt with the Rishonim's issue with what was the issue in the first place. There was an announcement. Must be that it was an Issa d'Oraisa. So we touched that up according to some of the Rishonim. How it could be an answer? Yeah.
Is this a red against the Exos?
Why? No, we're not talking about the Eidim here, we're talking about the Lova. The Ktos was answering by the Eidim.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, the same type of idea.
No, the Lova is for sure puzzle. The Lova is for sure. The Eidim is only later on, but the Lova would be puzzle at the time of Alva. Yeah.